Let's just summarise some of what we know. We know that RSPCA Inspector Andy Bostock is in possession of 2 post-mortem reports. We also know that somebody prevented one of these reports from being given to the horse owner. We know that there were 3 different reasons given on different dates as to why the owner could not be given the report. These were: we are waiting for a CT scan, even though a scan had already been done; we are waiting for toxicity reports; and we have a suspect, even though the police told me there was no suspect. We know that in normal circumstances, even if the horse had been murdered, there is no reason why the owner should not be given a copy of the report. The pathologist who did the post-mortem thought the owner should have been given the report. We also know that from David Caton's comments that many of the injuries follow the classic pattern of animal mutilation cases documented all over the world. We know that black helicopters were witnessed a few weeks before the incident. We also know that nobody has been charged with the offence of murdering these horses. Does this all point to a cover-up on animal mutilation in the UK? And just who is Andy Bostock really working for? Does he have links to DEFRA and possibly the security services? I've obviously mentioned the main injuries in the documentary, but just give us your overall impression of the first case.
Yes, I mean there's a fairly neat, roughly 5 or 6 inch diameter hole on the left side of the neck. And then within that area of flesh and skin and hide removal, there seems to be 2 smaller holes within that bigger hole. And since the horse went for post-mortem at Sutton Bonington campus, which is a veterinary training college, they were reporting that there was internal trauma to the neck. So they obviously did initial x-rays, and that definition is perhaps not so good, so they decided they would go to the expense of a CT scan to try and find out, without opening the neck up, I imagine initially, to see what had happened in that area, which was swollen slightly, I think they were reporting, and we're still awaiting the post-mortem reports on that.
We've done as much as we can to investigate the case, and really the icing on the cake will be the post-mortem report, which would say whether organs have been missing and whether blood has been removed and this kind of thing.
And the cause of death is the big mystery. What's put the horse down in the first place? In fact, all 3 of them, or certainly 2 of them we know of.
Now, as usual, we haven't managed to get a copy of the post-mortem report, which is exactly what happened in the 2010 case, even though we were promised one. The pathologist said that she would have expected the horse owner to be given a copy of that straight away.
Yes.
It seems to us that they may have fed the horse owner a line that they've got some on investigation in order to prevent her from giving us further information.
They have apparently confided in her that there's some poisoning aspect of it taking place, inferring that the horse was poisoned by a person, a suspect. I think the RSPCA inspector, and their job is to work with the police to get evidence to find a culprit and get a successful prosecution. That's one of their roles when there's been an animal attack. So I think he's the man, he's the key man who's calling the shots on this and directing how it goes. So I think the police have, in all innocence, have issued what is correct from their point of view, as is the pathologist, so that it looks like the person who's blocking the information to clear the horse owner and us, or anybody else for that matter, is the RSPCA. When you consider that as a public funded body, you know, and they're not as though they've got the restraints of the police service upon them, I find it's a bit almost discrediting the role of the RSPCA to act as judge and jury sort of thing in these cases.
Now, let's just discuss some of the evidence, David. I'm going to put this diagram up on the screen, which I think in some of these animal mutilation cases, this is possibly what's going on. Not specifically anti-lymphocyte globulin, But I just want to put this up on the screen to show people what animals are used for by our own medical practice.
Yes.
Right? Horses are used to create antibodies, and which are given to organ transplant patients to stop them rejecting the organs. So one example is anti-lymphocyte globulin. So what they do is they take lymph nodes from the spleen or thymus, and they create washed white cells, and they actually inject them into a horse. That horse then produces globulin is then extracted from the horse serum. It's put in a vial and it's injected. It's used to inject into humans. I'm just going to read this section from Wikipedia on it. It says that ALG, anti-lymphocyte globulin, is an infusion of animal antibodies against human T cells, which is used in the treatment of acute rejection in organ transplantation. It was developed in the 1960s, during which time 74 scientific papers were published on its use. Experimental preparations were first used in the Stanford laboratories in heart transplantation, and commercial preparations have been available since the 1970s. It has also been used in the treatment of aplastic anemia. It is less commonly used than the similar anti-thymocyte globulin, and like ATG, it is associated with cytokine release syndrome in the short term and an increased risk of post-transplant lymphoproliferative disorder in the long term. ALG is more likely to cause side effects than ATG, but is safer than OKT3, etc. One notable source of ALG was a horse called Volcano, who lived in South America. At one point in the mid-1990s, the world's entire supply of ALG came from this horse. So this technique of creating antibodies in horses can be used to create presumably thousands of doses, right? So you're using the anatomy of an animal to create antibodies for human beings. So it seems that it's the blood and soft tissue organs where antibodies reside that are taken in these cases. So could it not be something similar? That this horse has been injected with something a few weeks previous, and it's been harvested to take whatever those who took it need, that they're using for some, perhaps not ALG, but something similar. Because there are other animals that they grow antibodies in, sheep, rabbits, which we both know are get mutilated.
Yeah. So it could be that they've got hybrid human beings out there that have been abducted and are messing around with genetically, who are suffering sort of the same effects of organ rejection, or the alien species have got problems of their own, which is similar to ours, so their own manipulation, of tinkering with their development and DNAs, etc. So they need to use our earthbound animals to put their own antibodies in, and then they harvest them later, which could account for lots of the mutilations.
Yeah.
So
If it is,
you could argue from their point of view, is for a good reason.
Yeah.
Hard luck for us, but
if it is not human beings that are responsible for this, but it's some other intelligent species, how are we going to know what their needs are in terms of medicine? They might have organs similar to us, or they might have hybridized. They're living on our planet. Maybe they're from other dimensions or worlds or what have you. So they just as human beings who transplant organs require something which can be made inside a horse, so other intelligent species may also require something that's made inside another animal.
It might be to combat some disease that we get. I mean, we get problems abroad, don't we? Malaria and all these diseases, which people have to be treated for and jabbed up for. So maybe coming to planet Earth gives them problems. So they need something to counteract these adverse problems.
And they may need a constant supply all the time, which would account for the
continued animal taking.
And all right, let's come on to another part of the mutilation, David, because in the case in East Sussex, the horse had its chestnuts removed. These are these small callus-like lumps on its legs. all 4 cleanly excised, as we saw in the video, and with Rascal.
Yeah.
We've really scratching our heads over this. We can't
Yeah.
understand why anyone would remove them.
Yes.
And you've got 2 cases 5 years apart, a few hundred miles apart, or however far it is from East Sussex to Leicestershire.
Yes.
With the same, exactly the same 4 chestnuts excised.
Yes.
So that's 3 cases that we know of.
Yes. All 4.
And we just can't come up with any suggestion as to why they would do that. I mean, I suggested that maybe the animal's clamped and the chestnuts get in the way of the clamping mechanism. But
I think there would be marks of clamps if that was the case.
You thought that they've maybe put some sort of monitoring implant in that part of its body because it's redundant, and then they remove it to take the implant away.
Yeah, and that implant would not interfere with the bloodstream of the animal, perhaps, because it's a obsolescent.
Yeah, it might not get rejected.
Yes, yeah.
Inside a chestnut.
Yes.
Because it's redundant.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We're hypothesising, folks. We don't know. Yeah. But anyone who has any thoughts on it,
we'd love to know.
Yeah, we would.
Yes, so professional opinions would be very gratefully received. Yeah. And why would they often take ears or portions of ear, as in the case that they have with honey in Leicestershire in the beginning of September? And again, you get a double cut line where they've taken a cut lower down to remove the outer hide, and then a higher cut, and exposing the gristle, the tissue of the ear, before severing the ear at an angle, an inch or so from the base.
Right.
And they've taken mane hair, samples of mane hair. It's baffling completely. You know, why would they do that? What purpose?
Yeah, and I think Claire Watts actually said that in her horse that had the 4 chestnuts removed, on one of the legs it looked as though some blood had come out from where the chestnut was excised, and it had dripped down the leg, but only so far, and it had stopped. So she concluded from that the horse must have been standing when the chestnuts were cut off for a period of time, and at which point it then wasn't standing, because it only came down so far.
Yeah, or she thinks it might have been suspended with straps around the inner legs. It was like a hoist, a harness of some sort. Right. So it might have been just off the ground, with the legs dangling below, for a period anyway.
Absolutely mind-boggling.
And also, she said the jugular vein on the second horse, on the neck, were distended, which might suggest
bulging.
They might suggest that they've been taking blood from there or whatever.
Yeah, well, this is the thing we don't know, because
we've not seen the post-mortem. No.
They don't. But that would be interesting to know. All right, and David, well, thanks for joining me today to discuss this case. It's as you say, it's baffling. But if any viewer has any expertise or any comments, please email me at richard@richplanet.net. But until then, thanks very much, David.
Pleasure. Okay. I hope something develops that we can
bottom
this case.
Yeah.
Or cases.
And believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.